three interrelated challenges when it comes to local government, and you don't separate them. The Commission look at issues of governance. I'm not going to speak to that, but it also speaks to issues of financial position and viability, and it also look at the service delivery imperatives and parameters around the quality and sustainability of services, so that when I respond, you'll be able to look at how they relate to each other. When it comes to issues of funding, there are three forms of funding. The first form of funding is traditional financing for local government. In that traditional financing of local government, when we met as a commission, we agreed that there are a lot of inefficiencies, but there is also poor performance. That traditional funding will include the issues of the grants that are given by the state, whether is it on water, whether is it on electricity. Secondly, it includes your trading services, because you need to be able to sell the service and someone must pay. But it will also include the issues of rates and taxes. And the main issue that you are saying, let's improve the operational inefficiencies and poor performance. In the main, we have said all these trading services, both in terms of the three interrelated spaces, we must ring-fence the funding so that there is a prudent financial management of traditional funding. When there is that ring-fencing, whether within a dedicated, what to call it, an account then, that money will be used for one component. In other words, you'll be able to use it for operation and maintenance. You attend to an asset, so that you can continue to sweat the asset, then you can get money out of it. But the other component in the ring-fence budget for utilities or utility service, you can then be in a position to pay the people you owe. Remember, if you buy electricity, you must pay ESCOM. If you buy water, you must pay Minister Majodin and the water boards and so forth. But you also have to have a certain portion to plan for growth. That's how the ring-fencing model must happen. And we have noted that money goes back to National Treasury. In that traditional financing, a number of actions has been taken just to improve. The question of accurate billing is at the center. Many citizens are complaining about incorrect bills, faulty meters causing problems, and using the technology as a platform just to improve efficiency of billing. It will then help you to manage the asset, but it will also deal with the question of revenue management. Then there is also the question of illegal connections. In most services, there are people who are tapping into the system and infrastructure, whether water, electricity. When you remove illegal connections, we will have the capability of ensuring that the availability of the service is very high, but at the very same time you'll collect this. Then there is an issue around payment of services, including the debt management, which is the issue, which is the biggest issue. Then there's a debt relief. When Zuba was presenting on our behalf, Comrades Sputler and ESCOM, they actually to put a package on how to actually help. Sis Pemi, as a Minister of Water, she's also looking at the same, working with National Treasurer, a case by case, so that you can deal with the current situation. The second point on funding, we call it blended finance. On blended finance is where you know that within there has to be a funding of the social component and the economic component. The state will remain responsible for that component in terms of grants and subsidies. Then there's this one which is for economic growth and others. Therefore, you'll have to go to the markets. Then from there you use the blended finance. In both instances it's being used. And that's why we are recommending the issue of different modes of implementation, whether SPV, whether concessions and others or private sector funding. But when they come in, we wanted to ensure that municipalities, they remain with a sense of ownership. So that we don't actually create an impression that we are outsourcing that. That will help you. Where will you get the additional money that you need? Then there is also new funding that you can get now on the basis of what you call the climate change dispensation, your blue bonds and your green bonds. Very, very available depending on how do you do certain things. Those are the monies that are available in the market. And then there is also the role of availability of private sector investment. That's why we're opening up the economy. We're opening up the reforms, both in the water, electricity, and the other services. The last point of intervention, because we said they are related, is the availability of the service to those that it used to be there yesterday, but today is not available. Your intermittent water supply, the availability of the electricity and others. We are considering to say that the ANC must push government to look at a once-off intervention, wherever they will find the resources, to deal with the crumbling infrastructure or assets as we speak right now. Because it requires billions and billions in terms of actually bringing back those assets that have caused either non-revenue water, issues of load reduction, and so forth. Those are the main aspects that we see when you look at the question. Don't remove the issues of the governance and the service delivery. They are interrelated because then they can give you operational efficiency and financial viability.
All right, thank you very much. We have a question on local government regarding the funding model. I'm going to ask Comrade Dixon to take that. Is there any other comrade? And do you have additions? Comrade Masemula? You can come this side.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, and a very good afternoon to members of the media and members of the National Executive Committee. I think in responding to the issue on the funding model of local government, largely and contextually, Comrade Mahlobo gave elements of this particular policy process which necessitated the reason why it becomes extremely important for the ANC to give a very clear instruction to or a pointer to government to look at this particular policy process. The 1998 white paper on local government made certain serious policy assumptions, and 30 years into democracy, some of those policy pronouncements are no longer practical in terms of reinforcing and capacitating municipalities to be able to perform and deliver municipal services. For instance, the existing formula says municipalities are expected to basically raise 90% of their own revenue, and therefore national government, through differentiated funding arrangements, either through grants and as well as through equitable share, should be able to provide only 10% of that. Out of the existing socio-economic conditions that our communities are basically finding themselves in, individual households struggling probably out of the declining economic growth and related problems around jobs and difficulties that people are basically going through, it becomes extremely difficult for some of them to pay for services, and to a larger extent there is what probably characterizes that space as a culture of non-payment, which in some instances is not because communities do not want to pay. It is because of what they basically are going through economically and therefore impacting their social stabilities going forward. This situation brought unintended consequences where budgets of municipalities are basically affected and therefore infrastructure is crumbling, maintenance is no longer as it's supposed to be. To a large extent, provision of water, of sanitation, of maintenance of roads and other related municipal services, the quality thereof in many areas is basically affected. A number of municipalities are therefore expected to pass budgets which are not necessarily fully funded, and they list a number of initiatives which they become unable to basically realize. And all these matters is because of the unavailability of appropriate money in terms of budgets to perform their responsibilities. So therefore, the review on the funding model is basically a very long-lasting policy response that will have to provide a much more better relief so that the nationally collected revenue, it is shared amongst the three spheres of government, horizontally and as well as vertically, so that over and above the additional resources that municipalities will be getting through trading of services and other related differentiated funding models, at the center will be to give them certainty that the nationally collected revenue, they will be able to secure a substantial amount of money, probably equal to what provinces are getting. A formula will be determined most probably by your Finance and Fiscal Commission, which will therefore then empower these municipalities to implement their integrated development plans in a very, committed way, with certainty, without, doubts whether their budgets are funded or not funded. And as you rightly said, that the department made a pronouncement with regard to this matter. Work is underway, which is led by the Department of Lekgotla, Finance, and as well as SALGA. We're working on a draft document, and most probably once the document is ready for public engagement and stakeholder discussions, such a document will be shared. But it is not necessarily an isolated policy review process. It is part and parcel of the overall review on the white paper on local government, the one that was adopted in 1998, that we thought it would be very appropriate, and that's why the ANC believes very strongly that to build resilient, effective, and efficient structures of municipal government that will deal with matters of proper governance, resilient and effective institutional arrangements, municipalities that will deal with proper financing, and overall have a holistic, functional system of local government, it necessitated that the ANC should be able to drive this particular process on the actual review. And therefore, funding model is one aspect of the review, because it will include review on governance systems of local government based on the experiences we have acquired over the past 30 years. It will basically look at how do we look at the institutional capacities, issues of the professionalization of local government to a large extent. It will be part and parcel of those areas of review of the policy, the provision of services basically, what alternative policy measures we could be able to put in place to ensure proper access of citizens to the services municipalities are providing. So it's a very broad policy process. And we have just produced a roadmap with regard to this particular process, and I think we should be able to share such with members of the South African public, including the media, because that policy roadmap points to the need that in the next coming 2 months, basically, if all goes well, by the end of February, the technical committee that has been established, it should be able to produce a draft discussion document that will be circulated throughout the country, and therefore, as the African National Congress, will therefore then embark on a very robust, if not aggressive, consultations on how do we want to invite South African people to make necessary inputs on how do they intend to see the future local government system being modeled in which way. And therefore, the ANC remains committed to see to it that we have a very functional system of local government, and of course that remains and continues to be our primary responsibility going forward at this point in time. I think I could just briefly comment in that manner with regard to the question around the funding model of local government, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Masemula. I did see a satisfied look. As I know her by now, a very satisfied look on
their body
the face of from the SABC. I'll take SABC this side. You covered, all right. Newsroom, and then we'll come to power, and then we'll go back to ENCA. Junior.
Junior Commander from Newsroom Africa. To Mr. Matoho and Mama Georgina, the President has identified the issue of the water crisis as a serious issue in South Africa, and there being a need to put as much attention to that as was the case to load shedding. Besides the once-off investment on the crumbling infrastructure that Mr. Mahlobo has already spoken about, as well as the water mafia situation, what else would be done to try and address this situation? And when it comes to that water mafia situation, is there a report, and how bad is that crisis when it comes to the water mafia? And to Mr. Mahlobo, sir, please indulge me. Yesterday, there was in one of the briefings, there was a lot said about members of the NEC that have failed to present themselves before the Integrity Committee, and your name was among one of those that was raised. And there is this suggestion that you are now going to be hauled before the disciplinary committee of the ANC. Could you please confirm this? Is this the case, and why did you fail to present yourself before the Integrity Committee if that was the case? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I then proceed to Power.
Good day, Nkosinathi Shazi from Power FM News. I just have two questions, but I see Mr. Pakstow is about to leave. It was actually directed to him, but Umbuzo, my first two questions is directed to anyone who can comment on this. So we just received news that 9 South African National Defence Force soldiers have passed away at DRC during that conflict. Apparently they were under-resourced, bengenai ammunition. So we just wanted to find out the view from the African National Congress on what they believe, on what they feel on that situation happening at DRC. And then, Mr. Pakstow, just as Uchepe local government intervention of the ANC, this year we will be hosting G20. Of course, Gauteng will be the host province, but the state of decay in the city of Johannesburg remains a problem. Will you guys be starting with your interventions in Johannesburg? Is it part of the agenda to clean up the city before the world leaders descend? Mzansi. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. ENCA?
All right, I think I will start on that very sad note of the servicemen and women who perished in the DRC and speak mainly to the issue of underfunding that allegedly the South African National Defence Force has been subject to. Perhaps speaking from that point of view generally on the impact of having to juxtapose the limited financial resources and having to implement austerity measures, and how really generally can you remedy that particular situation. And then I will come to Minister Tau and his deputy talking about the 100 billion rand transformation fund, which, as you already know by now, you are being accused of unilaterally processing it. The allegation is that you even undermined cabinet processes, wonder how, and government of national unity. But essentially, it is being slated as another project of BEE nature that the critics are saying is out there to empower the ANC-connected people. Just your response there, and in your response, if you can just perhaps tell us how that fund is going to be dispersed and who is it targeting for which programs. Just maybe use that opportunity to educate us. Lastly, I want to talk about yesterday the president, during the opening remarks, I think his lines were talking more about the geo-economic turmoil. And I want to specifically talk about the fact that the new president of the United States has suspended foreign aid generally across the country except Israel and another country. And we, as South Africa, I think since 2004, we've been receiving, up to now, up to $5.6 billion in the form of US aid and PEPFAR program. And given the fact that our country is said to be the capital of HIV and AIDS, and the work that money is going into addressing issues of TB, did that find expression? Are you worried perhaps that this could be a permanent suspension of such aid? And what will this have detrimental effect? And what is the the way to cushion this? Because I suppose all of us, we just don't know the man in the White House will be governing in the next 4 years.
Thank you very much for those questions. I'm going to turn to the panel. And I do need to prime one of the panelists to comment on the matter of the global balance of forces, and with a particular focus on the developments in the U.S. and posture towards developing countries such as South Africa. May I get a taker there? And then I will come to you, Comrade.
Thank you very much. I had excused myself.
Thank you.
You hijacked me.
Thank you, members of the media.
Just to say that Comrade Mzwandile was chairing the Commission on Local Government and is better placed to respond on behalf of the Commission. And I participated in the ETC. So I think we are well represented from that point of view, at least in terms of the local government issues. Just talking about the Transformation Fund. So we received a question from a member of parliament. And the question was, are you discussing a transformation fund? And of course we said, yes, we're discussing it. And the same member of parliament then issues a statement that says, we're imposing a transformation fund. There must be something fundamentally wrong. The Comrade Swai, as chair of the committee, is a member of your committee, who says, are you discussing this matter? We're discussing it. Has it been engaged in cabinet, in government? No, it has not, because it's still in the DTIC. And it will go to other departments in terms of engagement. And it will go to society in terms of engagement. And I think it was an important point to emphasize, because I think that it is a bit of a challenge when, in fact, a significant issue related to transformation is undermined through an orchestrated effort. Of introducing a debate that had not been published, but we had already said, yes, we are discussing the matter. Coming to the fund itself, I think that, and the ANC had directed through the manifesto of the ANC that we need to accelerate economic transformation in the country and improve the mechanisms of accelerating transformation. In that regard, we have undertaken a process of reviewing comprehensively issues and means of implementation with regards to transformation. And the fund is a component part of an overarching discussion that says, well, we've had broad-based black economic empowerment, how far have we advanced, what do we need to improve, what do we need to consolidate, and how do we measure improved outputs. And the Transformation Fund is not intended to be a new source of revenue as alleged by introducing an additional tax. It certainly is not. It is looking at current equity equivalent funding, it's looking at enterprise and supplier development funding, and other sources of revenue that could be consolidated. I'm talking revenue in its broader sense because some of this is deployed through the private sector, so I shouldn't have said revenue, but other sources of funding that could be consolidated and aggregated to improve outcomes. And I'm going to make one basic example. So we have equity equivalent funding, and we've got enterprises that have invested in the South African economy and accrued BBBE qualification points on the basis of investing in an equity equivalent fund as opposed to having black enterprises owning shares in their companies. So it's an equity equivalent function or fund or mechanism. And then you engage the question, as we've been engaging with Comrade Zuko and the team. So how does these equity equivalent funds perform in relation to transformation? And in one instance, the answer is, well, we have about 10% upstream, 10% downstream, 15% or so downstream, and the rest is side stream. Now that sounds like a lot of English. Essentially what it's saying is that only about 25% of the enterprises who are engaging are actually engaged in an industrial effort in relation to that value chain. The others, the companies are procuring, are side stream. They are not necessarily part of the enterprise value chain. So, in essence, you are undermining industrialization effort that could be pursued through broad-based black economic empowerment, but also the active participation of black people in the industrial value chains, because you've said that, in fact, the bulk of your resources are going towards side stream efforts. And all we're saying is by aggregating and consolidating our efforts, we can focus our efforts on industrialization and participation in industrial value chains. By ensuring that there's been an increase in the number of companies, maybe I should present it differently, a decrease in the number of companies that are reporting on broad-based black economic empowerment, those that are listed at least. So we're saying, well, what we need to monitor those that are not reporting, but secondly, we need to monitor more closely how we improve the output of the investments into broad-based black economic empowerment. Because you can't have a situation where billions go towards broad-based black economic empowerment, but the output is something else. So how do we measure output? You have companies that say, but we don't want to be in the business of enterprise and supplier development. Can there be an alternative mechanism of deploying those resources without it being us? And we're creating a conduit for those companies to be able to do that. So the point I'm making is that the fund is intended to be an aggregation of effort. It is intended to be a partnership between government and the private sector to ensure that we're able to improve the output from a broad-based black economic empowerment point of view. And it is our intention that we would be actively engaging with business on the implementation of this and other mechanisms of improving broad-based black economic empowerment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think just as a follow-up from Comrades.
Come closer. Still on the Transformation Fund or related issues.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to add on what Comrade Parks has just stated, that I think as members of the media and members of society, we just have to differentiate between oversight, which is the role of Parliament, and overreach. Overreach is when individuals impose themselves beyond what they could be doing, because if there are discussions in the department, there is a mechanism in Parliament in which we conduct oversight. And we know that in terms of the rules, individuals can go to different departments or entities, ask certain questions, but they must not run ahead of themselves, especially when the initial discussion. So we just want to raise that caution, because what the Minister is saying in his capacity as the NEC member here is that, yes, there are discussions in the department, and we've not been, it has not reached a point where stakeholders, including ourselves in Parliament, could be consulted with regard to those issues. So we just have to be wary of those individuals who run ahead of themselves in just making this pronouncement and so on and so on. We've got other examples of people wanting to go to entities. We ask them, what do you want? Because we've got a platform in Parliament to ask anybody anything. Why such a sense of rushing to ask questions when you would wait for them, we call them,
to appear before Parliament, and then we explain the things that we need to do. So I just thought I need to add this part. With regard to the question that was asked by Power FM on the cleanliness of Joburg and so on and so on, I think the committee has resolved on the program of action for all municipalities. For that reason and basic reasons that we want our cities to be clean again. The issue of cleaning the municipalities in Gauteng is a priority in terms of our program of action. And we've asked our deployees in government to really look into their budget, especially with regard to issues of repairs and maintenance, including ensuring that there is sufficient resources as prescribed by National Treasury to ensure that there is that 8 to 10% maintenance, because all of them, we've looked into their books. The maintenance budget is very low, affecting the infrastructure, simple things like cleaning, repairs and maintenance, dealing with potholes and so on and so on. So we're quite certain that by the time this big conference sits, not just in Johannesburg, because it will be all over South Africa, but in the main, in Gauteng, we just want to make sure that some of the basic things would have been sorted out, besides just rushing to build or deploy new infrastructure. We have to take care of the existing infrastructure and ensure that things are properly working at local government level. So those are the two issues I wanted to deal with. I wanted to suggest that the issue about the DRC and so on, there is a commission on peace and stability. I think that's best suited to deal with that particular question so that we don't answer things that have not been processed in these different committees. Thank you very much.
There you have it from a former mayor. I will now turn to, so there are two questions that I would plead with ourselves that we don't deal with. The matter of what's happened in the DRC, as Comrade Mzwadile correctly indicates, we will have a chance to respond, offer a comprehensive ANC response in the afternoon, and then in the next presser. Then the second issue is the matter that concerns Comrade David Mahlobo. May I respectfully ask that we don't venture into that matter. The ANC will offer you a response directly, but outside of the scope of this particular briefing. Respectfully so. I would now call on Comrade Phemi Majolini to then reflect on issues in the water and sanitation environment and to respond to the question. Over to you, Phemi, if you could come closer to the mic. Okay.
No,
and any further comments?
Thank you very much, Samlomo. Good afternoon to all media houses present here. Indeed, Junior, we are appreciating the fact that the President has elevated water issues to be priority number one in the country. You know that there is no substitute for water. We have been saying that we need a particular attention to be paid in terms of water provision. We are currently well balanced when it comes to the water resource. We do have water, enough water. However, there are challenges when it comes to reticulation of that water. We have a lot of non-revenue water, illegal connections, and we are saying as we put together our response, we need agility in terms of all stakeholders that are involved in the water sector to ensure that one work together in an integrated format, wherein if we are building a water resource, a dam, we build a water treatment plant, then there must be a reservoir that will connect immediately when we are done. But from the reservoir to the communities, you need taps. And therefore, when you need those taps, you need proper water pipes. We must take into cognizance that the current water infrastructure was not meant to absorb the growing population. And that is why on a daily basis, you see the best of those water pipes. We are therefore saying, one, when you come to the space of a municipality, we are lacking engineering capacity in municipalities across the country, and therefore must be able to do proper audit of that capacity, and part of the intervention of ensuring that we respond on priority one, we must work together to give that capacity. The second one is where you have people in informal settlement. They are there already. How do you ensure that you formalize what they use in those setups? Exactly what Honorable Comrade Scooter was saying, that you cannot just disconnect and leave them at that point. As you disconnect them, then legalize them. Put water metering properly to ensure that you also go to an extent of updating the indigent register to caution those who are unable to pay for these services, because there is a policy in terms of that. But as of a serious note is that the time that the turnaround time to respond to water leaks is worrying. And the water that you meet on the street is a purified water. It's clean water. And if we are to use water sparingly, we must then move with speed in terms of getting a quicker and updated technology that is going to assist us in closing the leaks. But as you close the leaks, you are doing repairs, but you must also balance that with a well-structured maintenance, because that is what has been lacking. We then said we must also capacitate our water boards to be able to be a proper resource as well for all municipalities where they give those services. But the user pay a principle by all communities that are using water, be it for industrial or for household, all of us, we must use water sparingly. Whilst I've said that we are in the balance, we have, as you might be aware, we have unblocked 14 mega projects, which cost us about 102 billion rands that we are now rolling out in various provinces, and that is to build and to give more capacity in terms of the raw water resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I see there's a follow-up question. Maybe just before you do, because it's a follow-up question. Go ahead, Lucy.
Sorry, ma'am. I just wanted to find out, some time ago there was an issue when there was a drought in the Western Cape, and then there was a point at which the farmers basically released dammed water as a gesture of goodwill. And the question was, who owns the water? And is it proper for individual farmers, whether it be in the Western Cape or anywhere else, to actually dam up water and basically not give access to other people? What is the situation politically around that and legally around that? Have you resolved that?
Thank you very much, Ebusi.
Just in the interest of time, Tando, is it related to the water situation?
Just under the GM Minister. So last year, call and the Treasury did implement it together with the DWS regarding withholding equitable shares for municipalities that are in water debt. I understand, I think about 5 municipalities have already been impacted by that. What has been the impact of that? Has it improved payment of the debt? And is that model going to be implemented across the country? Because I think those municipalities are only in the Free State. Yeah, thanks.
Just to respond to Busi, SAPC, that good gesture from farmers was appreciated. However, no one has a right to divert water and do what he or she likes about water. The water license is very clear. It has do's and don'ts. That is why when there was that collapse of 4 to 5 dams in the riverlands, we had to come in and say this is what is supposed to be done. So there is this tendency that we have since observed that whilst people have a right to apply for the water license for use, but they must not inconvenience anyone. We have a commission that is led by Judge Mwebe, currently in Limpopo, wherein some farmers there, they've made our people in the downstream not to have water. They take all water for their own self and selfish interest, and we are saying that is not on. The Water Act allows us to act immediately. We may even go to an extent of withdrawing the license if we have met with the people concerned and they are not changing that particular attitude. No one has a right to monopolize water. When it comes to the issue of DWS versus the withholding of equitable share working with the National Treasury, yes, indeed, we have that has been implemented. However, that is not a panacea for all the challenges that municipalities have. Some municipalities, even if you can withhold, they might not be able to pay the entire debt. But what the positive part of what we've done is that municipalities came to the fore and they've signed an agreement of how they are going to service their debt. We are still going to continue with that to ensure that they adhere to what they've signed. There are some municipalities who are running away. They go to court when we approach them. However, what we are interested in is not a punitive measure, but we want to ensure that they do what is expected of them. Because should one water board collapse, it does not only collapse for that municipality. For instance, you have the Val Central. Val Central is giving water to the entire Free State, to Northern Cape. Should one municipality make it to collapse, it is going to collapse for the two provinces. And that is the appreciation that we have for the president to lift the issue of water, that we must not reach a crisis situation in water. And we think that is indeed arresting us getting into a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am left with a few minutes. I'm going to ask that we wrap up. I'll take the last three colleagues. Comrade Mahlobo, Comrade Ukabazela, and then Comrade Zubo will close us out with the one related to international affairs.
No thanks, Comrade Somlomo. As me and Zai were driving the commission, there is something that we have said to those who are deployed in government, that South Africa will be hosting G20, and we want to showcase on behalf of Africa. The Ministry of Water and the Ministry of Energy and Electricity, our commission have requested them that during this period we don't want to have disruptions on the basis of load reduction and no availability of water. Comrade Pemi has answered, but as we're sharing the commission, there is an agreement to support the reforms that the minister is introducing. One of the reforms in water was the issue that the budget for water is going to be ring-fenced. And the commission never said, Minister, we don't agree with you, including the principle of a user pay principles. Then there was an appeal, like Comrade Pemi says, on the debt relief program that the minister needs to look at, so that, because the viability of the water boards must never be underestimated, but equally municipalities must be paid. We also supported that in the implementation model by municipalities in the current problem of challenges of capacity, we have said, Minister, proceed and supported them with National Treasurer COGTA and SALCA in one of the issues of mobilizing of capacity in terms of SPVs, the special purpose vehicle, without local government losing a sense of participation and ownership. An example in Mfuleni, eThekwini, and elsewhere, Ministry of Water, Comrade Pemi, is running with that, including issues of concessions, where you bring in private companies like your Slulumans, your Bywater, Midval, and others. There is an agreement, but with a qualification that we shouldn't do that, including the institutional reforms. In the water sector, there is a support that ministry proceed with your work around establishment of National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency, your CMA, irrigation boards, becoming Water Use Association. Those are some of the fundamentals. But we also learned that the minister, because water is priority issue number one, in the first quarter of this year, Minister Majordina will convene the country in a water indab. She will convene that so that at least the ANC wants a concrete turnaround plan for the water because it's now a priority issue. In the same vein, Comrade Sputler and his team, they were able to produce a turnaround plan for the electricity and energy challenges. I thought let me make those additions as part of our commission, Comrade Chair.
Thanks very much, Comrade Mahlobo. May I invite Comrade Kabasela?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I just wanted to elaborate on the issue that was raised earlier in relation to the challenges with the social grant, particularly the SRD. Just to say that the problem of going to court is a standard procedure for people who are declined the application to a grant, and so there's an internal appeal, and then of course the people are free to go to the to court after that. Now the department has got two approaches to that. Firstly, they would appeal if the court ruling is adverse, but if not, and if the court has made a ruling, then the department has got no choice but to deal with the reprioritization to be able to make the payments that are necessary. I think it's important to also say that, look, there's a huge bill of about 230 billion rand that goes into the whole comprehensive issue of the social security, and 19.2 million on the disability, old age, and child support grant. But the SRD, there have been 17 million applications, only 9.1 were approved. The 7.8 that were declined, those people can go to court, but if they go to court, it's usual, it would be on the basis that there were criteria that they didn't satisfy, and on the basis of which they were actually declined. And because it's an administrative action, they are free to go to court, and then of course when the court made a ruling, then the department has to deal with the issue from that point of view. I think that aspect of it, we must also realize that the issue of poverty is a problem that we've had to deal with for over a long time, trying to look at a policy that will stabilize our interventions on people who are outside the disability, old age, and child support grant. It raises, therefore, the issue of what we call the basic income grant. Now, that debate is a debate that is ongoing. It arises mainly now because some money has been put aside for the SRD, and in the course of this, the committee has actually urged the ministers to come together, particularly social development and treasury, to look into how this matter can be dealt with, because SRD, as it by definition, was supposed to be a temporary intervention, but poverty hasn't disappeared with the disappearance of COVID. So the distress is there. So there has to be a much more longer-term approach that will be looked into. So that discussion is going on at this point, and we hope that somewhere in the future, the issue of the basic income grant will be finalized, so that then there will be a shift from the SRD into that direction. The second issue that I think that you have raised is the question of raised on the basis of the VAT exemption. I think what we're really focusing on here is the 55% of people who are living below poverty line. Poverty is a big issue, it's a real issue, and on that basis, the performance of the economy has given us a very high cost of living and high inflation. So the ANC has a basket of a lot of issues that have been handed over to government to look at. The issue of the VAT exemption has to be considered. It has been raised with the minister. It will be looked at, and every now and again they have to do research and see how best they can refine this. Where I sit and where the committee sits, the focus on nutritious food, protein kind of food is important. When you look at it, and most of the poor communities rely on some food such as tripe and the gizzard, chicken livers and so on, stuff that is not really VAT exempted. And so we've actually to continue the challenge on behalf of the poor community for this basket to be widened. The issue of the sanitary pads was never part of it. It is now very much part of that basket. So there will always be a continuous review to see how best we can deal and respond to the issues of poverty. Of course, the issue of fuel levy is also raised that it needs to be looked at. Yes, we understand the explanation of how it came about and why it is rigid, but still we say it needs to be looked at because it's some of the issues that are putting pressure on the people. And as we know, people who move from townships, the fuel levy affects them insofar as the taxi fare is concerned. So those issues come in now. There are also issues of price fixing. Bread, ordinary food like bread, was the subject of this, and so government has to be alert to those. Then there are other issues of trying to reduce the cost of food, like releasing more land for increasing food production, for local use and for home gardens and all of this. These are also very important issues. So I'm just indicating that even the aspect of easy terms for loans for small businesses so that people can actually get their own income with a high level of unemployment, they've got to look into all of this. These issues for us are very important because they do have an impact on the challenges of the social ills, such as the teenage pregnancy. The Commission has looked at that. How do you reconstruct society and work together with government to deal with, support the education, and also dealing with the crime of statutory rape where the 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds are becoming pregnant, and also how to also make sure society also protects and does not stigmatize young mothers so that you don't have all of them being affected. The issues of substance abuse, crime is based mainly on that, and now the committee is looking at how government and society at all levels must go to district level to deal with the education on substance abuse, prevention of substance abuse, counseling, but also deal with the criminality associated with it. So it's all related to dealing with poverty and trying to deal with the impact on the high cost of living. We're just saying that those are some of the issues that the committee, the Commission is actually focusing on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kabazela. That was a mouthful. I will then end off with Comrade Soko.
Very brief comment, Comrade Matling. We've noted the statement by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, but as a general rule, we are paying attention to the agenda of the Trump administration. We've noted that they are saying they are reviewing U.S. aid across the board. There's no need for panic as yet. They didn't say they are cancelling the aid. Initially, they said they are reviewing them to re-rationalize them, as any administration would do that. So other than that, there's not much to say at the moment. We will see what they say eventually when they've looked at the entire structure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If we do not stop at this point, we are likely going to have members of the media starved by the ANC. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, comrade.